Hello, I'm Vince Mickens. Welcome to the inaugural edition of our Never Stop Flying Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation webcast, which recently aired live on Zoom. We have a few reasons for doing this Bob Hoover dedicated webcast. First and foremost, we want to ensure that the legacy of R.A. Bob Hoover is carried forward for many generations to come. Secondly, and particularly because of the current health crisis, we feel that this is a very engaging way to reach admirers of Bob while still sharing our foundation goals and needs. 6 years ago, our current president and board member Tracy Forrest collaborated with Mike Herman and other friends of Bob to form this foundation with its primary goal centering around raising awareness of opportunities in aviation and aerospace and providing mentoring style motivation for middle schoolers, high schoolers, and college level students who are affectionately referred to as Generation Z, or I like to call them Generation Zulu. Our panelists are Jim Kidrick, also a Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation board member and the president of the San Diego Air and Space Museum, Sean D. Tucker, super fantastic aerobatic performer extraordinaire, probably could add a few more adjectives on there, 100-year-old Brigadier General Charles E. McGee, one of the famed Tuskegee Airmen, and last but not least, Marine General Jack Dailey, with 3 retirements under his belt: the United States Marine Corps as a 4-star general, NASA, and most recently, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Forrest, and Tracy will tell us a little bit more about the goals of the foundation, his vision, and then his relationship with Bob. Tracy?
How do you talk about Bob Hoover? Vince, you did a great job of setting it up and talking about Bob. His greatest gift may have well been his tireless commitment to sharing his passion. His knowledge with his fellow aviators, indeed with anyone, especially the younger people, his interest in flying. He made everybody feel like his best friend. Our vision here with the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation is learning and safety for future generations. How do we pass that graciousness and passion for aviation that Bob had on to the younger generation? We're trying to educate the next generation on the art of flying as demonstrated by the life and accomplishments of Bob. To support a higher level of aviation competency with scholarships and fundings of organizations such as Sean's and others that promote aviation and the legacy of aviation. Anyone that ever met Bob can say they've had an honor of knowing Bob. He made everyone feel like you're the only person in the world when you're with him. And fortunately, I had the time to be that only person in the world with Bob, as well as many others through Bob's life, especially with the Reno Air Races. That was Bob's and mine week together at the Reno Air Races, and those were precious times. Prior to his passing, Bob, with the help of myself and Mike Herman, formed the Hoover Legacy Foundation. He did so for one purpose: to contribute to the growth and betterment of aviation. Bob had no interest in personal memorials. Yeah, he's got a lot of awards and plaques and so on, but he kept those in boxes in his attic. Bob wanted his name, his memorabilia, all of his aviation assets to be used to support quality preparation of tomorrow's aviation leaders. And through scholarships and students and supportive schools and programs, that's what we're trying to do, is to support Bob's legacy. Any ideas, any help any of you can give us, we're all ears. We'd like your participation, your support, financially, physically, whatever you can do to help us. Don't underestimate how every penny helps the cause. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim Kidrick for some of his sage words of wisdom.
Well, a day like this, of course, is a special treat for me because we have resident with us here in San Diego, the International Air and Space Hall of Fame, which members of the Hall of Fame that have been inducted are certainly the great Bob Hoover, but also Sean Tucker that joins us today, Jack Dailey, who is still on his way here as we've been working it, and the Tuskegee Airmen. So General Charles, all of the Tuskegee Airmen are in the International Air and Space Hall of Fame, and we're proud to be an organization that represents so many. Bob, of course, had really evolved because I think most of us are certainly aware of his talents as an aviator, but he had really evolved into kind of the elder statesman of aviation. He spent a great deal of time talking to young people, trying to keep guys like Tucker alive, of course, with little tidbits along the way. Right, Sean? I can see the smile on your face when you say that. And we were able to spend a great deal of time with him those final years. Mike Herman, the flying Bob Hoover taxi for a number of years with Rich Pickett, myself, and certainly others. It was an exciting time to really learn about kind of the inner self of Bob, because he had a lot of certainly rules of the road of aviation, but I would tell you rules of the road for life. And we all have our stories, but I'll tell you, he was just a sage advisor that I can think of a dozen things very quickly that someone should have told me when I was that young Navy fighter pilot trying to stay alive around an aircraft carrier. Had I been listening to Bob a little bit younger in my career, I might not have made some of the errors that I did, but he was certainly a very special man, and as I said kind of at the beginning, I will always remember him as that elder statesman that grew into a role through his life that was and is so meaningful to what I affectionately call the next greatest generations, because some of us are the greatest generation. When you look at Charles McGee, Bob Hoover, some of the children of the greatest generation, and what drives us is the realization that there are going to be future greatest generations. And I know, and Sean, I'm going to pass you to Sean here in just a second. He'll tell you a little bit about his academy, but that certainly is, I think, one of the elements that drives a Sean Tucker, is the belief that he has so much to pass on that could be beneficial to others and those young boys and girls that'll mean so much to us in our future. So I'm going to pass it to Sean, who, by the way, and I rib him about this all the time, I hired Sean to fly in an air show back in 1988 in Fallon, Nevada, and boy, do I regret that. I mean, it's now ended up in a lifelong friendship that I'm still trying to get out of. So, Sean, you're on.
You're just such a nice man, Sluggo. I just really appreciate that. But what I really do appreciate is every single person here on this call and the people that are listening. Bob, I'm the person I am today. I'm the man I am today. I'm the aviator I am today because of Bob Hoover. I was fortunate enough to have Bob in my life early on in my flying career. I started performing with Bob while he was still working in the mid 80s. And I'm telling you, that guy, how much advice he gave me, how it formed my attitude, who I was as a performer, why I was performing, the reason why I was performing. And it comes down to one word for me with Bob, and that's reverence. And Bob has had a reverence for all things humanity. And flying is this magnificent metaphor that he utilized to give life lessons to so many people, like he said. And I love the man. He was a colleague, a peer, a father figure, and just one heck of a lot of fun to be around with, man. I just can't tell you how many laughs we had together. And you guys, you Sluggo, Tracy, Rich, so many people dedicated so much of your time to keep Bob relevant through the last decade of his life. And he was at his finest till the day he went ballistic, and he did it on his own terms. And before he passed, a few months before, I had asked him if I could take my nonprofit name, which was Every Kid Can Fly, and rename it the Bob Hoover Academy. He goes, Sean, that's the most ridiculous idea I ever heard. What are you talking about? I said, Bob, General Dailey gave you a 7-foot-high statue in the Smithsonian. You've gotten all the awards. But truly what you're about, Mr. Hoover, is your iron will, your perseverance, your character. And when you were penniless when you grew up, you had a dream. You weren't a very good pilot, Bob. You made yourself a good pilot. You were blind and you cheated on your eye test. You were supposed to be a bomber pilot and you cheated on that. You never weakened on your conviction to be the best human being you could be. That being said, you're also one of the most gracious human beings I ever met. And I got broken kids in my community. My community is 72% Hispanic, and we had the highest kid-on-kid gang shooting as Chicago. Sometimes we're first, sometimes we're second. So he allowed me to rename it the Bob Hoover Academy. And I can't tell you, this is the best thing I've ever been involved with in my life, because we fix broken kids. We fix broken kids. My kids are not out there looting. You know why? Because they have self-esteem. They have love. We use the metaphor of flight as a STEM example. We teach them to fly. We allow them to face their fears, baby steps at a time. When they look at themselves in the mirror, they say, I have value. And it is just something else. And we're down now, get on kid shooting. In the last 5 years, 67%. That's a data point. That's a fact. I got kids graduating from the Marine Corps. I got kids going to college. My first AMP mechanic is now working for FedEx at $50 an hour. We had to drag him out of his house, kicking and screaming to put him into this school. The judge says, you're going to jail if you don't go to this school. And it is magnificent. Bob's legacy is now, his legacy is in their veins. And these kids are becoming productive citizens of this world. And they're here.
Oh, wow. Looks like we lost you, Sean. Are you coming back?
Absolutely the most humblest experience that I have to be involved with the Bob Hoover Academy. And now I'll throw it over to you, Vince.
All right. Thank you.
Sean, let me
Passionate speech. Your speech was so strong you went out for a minute. So now it brings me the pleasure of tossing to and talking with both Brigadier General Charles McGee as well as General Jack Dailey. General Dailey, if you want to come back up on screen while I'm talking to General McGee, that would be great. We don't have your video right now or your audio. So I have gotten to know General McGee for about the last 8 or 9 years. And I had the pleasure, it was funny how we met, because I have to give Ed Bolin from the NBAA responsibility for that. He thought that he knew how passionate I am about aviation, particularly historical values of it. And so he suggested that I fly down with General McGee at that time, Colonel McGee, sorry, that I fly down with him to the NBAA convention in Orlando. So we flew down on a Lear 60, and that was the first time we met and started to getting to know each other, et cetera. And then, years go by very quickly. And the next thing I knew, a couple of years ago, I heard, oh, General McGee's getting ready to turn 99. And I thought, wow, he should do something really cool. So, that kind of accelerated our friendship and just learning more. It's one of those things, I'm going to sound a little bit like Sean for a minute, but it's one of the things where you read about somebody or hear about them or hear about the organization they were involved in this case, Tuskegee Airmen, but you really can't appreciate what it really is until you get to know that person and know even more about the background. And that's when I really, as I got to know General McGee more and find out more about his history and the fact that he flew in 3 wars. He did over like 409 sorties or thereabouts over the 3 wars. He's flown, I think now, including the planes he flew in the last couple of years, like 37 different aircraft. Everybody associates him with his P-59 named Kitten, but he has flown quite a few other aircraft. He's also been a flight instructor, teaching other military pilots how to fly. And the beat goes on. A zillion awards. Welcome, General Dailey. A zillion awards, and just an amazing thing. There's a huge similarity to he and Bob Hoover. They're 2 of the most humble pilots I've ever met in my life. I mean, for all of their accomplishments and their bravery and their heroism and their honor of duty, et cetera, and their patriotism, they are still Bob was, and General McGee is a very humble person. You can't get him to brag about anything he did. He'll talk to you seriously about it, and he'll tell you some details about things that are better than me, because I can't remember what I did last week. But
Vince,
yes.
Let me interrupt. Let's do a quick comm check with Jack Dailey. Make sure, because he's got his, he's unmuted. Jack, if you can hear us, we can hear, I think, and we can see you right now.
Okay, I can hear you loud and clear. And,
okay, you're 5x5 visual and audio with us.
Okay, I'm going to turn this other one. I'm on 2 machines. That's why I'm trying to get back on. Okay, I'll come back in just a second.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Okay, no problem. So, anyhow, well, actually, thank you, Jim, for that interruption, because I probably would have gone long-winded on General McGee. General McGee, how about you give us some of your perspective on Bob Hoover? I know that you met him a few times down at Oshkosh, et cetera, and just talking about your parallel experiences to some degree in different arenas, but still dealing with the same numbers and the same challenges, and the effort to inspire the next generation.
Thank you. Am I coming in?
Yes, you're fine.
Very much. Certainly, we're dealing with a true elder statesman of aviation and what it means, how we can pass that on. The Academy is a wonderful step, and certainly what's coming from that is important. How can that be expanded? Because the mentoring of youth that don't get to the Academy, but they're out there and needed, and I think that's a key. I don't know whether you have a video of Sean's flying experience. The love of aviation is certainly something. I had it. And loved every minute of the opportunity to share. The key now is how to mentor the youngsters across the country, not just can we establish other schools or get an interest in other locations where there is a need. I know our services, they say they're short of pilots, they need this, they need that. Is there a way to work with those agencies, whether it's Air Force, Navy, or Marines, to help get the word out to those that are qualified, or get them mentored into a direction or an opportunity to be qualified to fill the roles that are needed as the aviation community, still one of the leaders in technology and so on that goes on in our country. I don't know, do we have a video at all that can be taken to schools or other locations, churches, not just schools. There's so many opportunities. It does take people and interest and support, and certainly I think providing the wherewithal that others can support the foundation's goals is one of the things that needs to be looked at and find a way to be supportive.
We actually do, but let me let Tracy and Sean address that. Tracy, in terms of the types of things he's talking about to get the kids encouraged.
Yes, we have a lot of videos and a documentary on Bob that we can share. Someday we'd like to, one of our dreams is to have a traveling exhibit similar to what they have for the Tuskegee Airmen to tell Bob's story. As Sean mentioned, how do we keep Bob relevant? How do we keep his iron will and perseverance relevant? How do we pass that on to future generations? How do we remind ourselves and others of Bob's relevance? How do we keep instilling that on future generations? And it's kind of a question I'm proposing to Sean and the panel. They're great words, and we all know how relevant Bob was, what effect he had on people, what great advice he had to the young aviators. And I'm just hoping that we can find ways to continue that on to the future generations.
I agree with that. I think one of our challenges is making the connection between the historical factors of Bob and the Tuskegee Airmen, et cetera, and something that they can relate to and really want to engage with.
Well, this is Sean. 6 years we've been working on this program in partnership with the Department of Education in Monterey County. I fund all the flying, I fund the flight instructors, but they give me two full-time alternative education teachers. They give me a full-time behavioral psychologist. My specialty is fixing broken kids. Those kids you see that are looting are broken, and their dreams are valid too. We just got to get them on the right track. In America, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, whether you're rich or poor, your dreams are valid, okay? I have a template. The template's working in Salinas. Now that we've had this partnership for so long, the administrators who are very risk adverse aren't so risk adverse anymore because we have data now on successes, highest graduation ratios, good citizens, no recidivism. This stuff is working, and there's no better person, no better iconic person than Mr. R.A. Bob Hoover to carry that mantle because of what he represented and we as a community take ownership in. The general is absolutely right. We can do this in other places, but the buy-in has to be with the Department of Education because they have much better, we're going to 40 kids now. We're moving to the World War II hangar in Salinas. We haven't even announced yet. We're just finishing negotiations. Now my airplanes, they're gonna have a whole hangar space. We're gonna have shop space. They're gonna start getting work on, starting in the 9th grade, they get to start working on airplanes besides flying them. So there's a whole pathway now we're working on. And once that happens, we just bought units from Embry-Riddle for online education. And so now and this is not something that happens overnight, but this community right here, this community that loves Bob Hoover, that loves aviation, can take ownership of this because he's our guy. He's our guy. And I got to tell you, I have more fun. Harrison Ford came up here and to check it out. And when it was his turn to talk to the class, all Harrison did right in front of the class is start crying. He was so emotionally moved by the energy and the humility. And these kids didn't know who Harrison Ford was. These are kids, right? I mean, but the administrators knew who Harrison was. And I had all the administrators there. And he's in that classroom crying. It took him probably 20 minutes to get his act together. He started talking. He we're walking down, watching one of the kids solo out at the airport. We're walking down there and he goes, "You know what, Tucker? You're a man maker." I go, "Nope, we all are men maker. I mean, we all are men maker, men and women maker." This metaphor we have, this magical metaphor we call flight, to elevate your soul, your character. We can offer this to our community, and our community is the kids who are our future. And it's incumbent upon us, who've been given so many gifts, the gifts of Bob Hoover, the gifts of our mentors and General McGee and General Dailey and all those guys, to carry that legacy forward. And it couldn't be under a better mantle than R.A. Bob Hoover.
Thanks, Sean.
Oh, wait, by the way, to answer General McGee's question, if you go to bobhooveracademy.org, we have some pretty significant videos on showing you the pathways that of what we do with our work, because it's not just the flying, it's taking the whole character of the kid and allowing them to believe in themselves, allowing them to trust themselves that they can make the right decisions, and holding them accountable. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Sean. Before I go to General Dailey, I just wanted to say one other thing with General McGee. So General McGee, one of the things that you've talked about, and this really kind of ties in with what Sean was just talking about too, and what you were saying before. You talk a lot about the Boy Scouts. You're an Eagle Scout. As a matter of fact, you just recently, well, you've been honored several times, and you just recently, and Jim's raising his hand, another Eagle Scout. And then, and also you've talked about your 4 Ps. Could you just elaborate for a few minutes on your Eagle Scout, on your involvement with the Boy Scouts, and then your 4 Ps, please?
Yes, well, glad to, and hopefully it adds and helps in developing the ideas that are needed at the foundation, seeking to expand the story beyond where it is now. But you know, I've always said if everybody lived by the Scout Oath and the 12 Scout Laws, we'd have a different country for sure. We're a long way from it, but it's the other thing I always say: if you give up hope, you're lost. So we don't give up hope. And that kind of makes maybe there's a couple of key words that can be brought from Bob's experiences that are words the youngsters can carry with them. You know, the Commemorative Air Force has a dog tag with 4 good statements on it. To expand and reach out and take to schools, I think it's this type of thing that's necessary. But I ended up coming up with the 4 Ps. I don't mind mentioning them if you have. Some of you may not have heard, but perceive, prepare, perform, persevere. Perceive, dream your dreams. I like to add, find what your talents are, what you enjoy. I love flying, just as Bob did, and he's way beyond even my experience from that point of view. But find what you like, hopefully, because you want to go to work don't want to go to work every day, but not liking what you have to do because you didn't prepare. Get a good education. Unfortunately, so many of our schools today, graduating students don't know how to sign their name. So many things like this in communities in our country. Got some good schools. Top high school, I think, in the United States is the one in Hawaii that Barack Obama graduated from. I visited there, and what an atmosphere. But again, even so much of what we say, it takes support and money, and that's hopefully there's the foundation's contacts and so on, and spread and to those who can help, because it does take money to get programs going, expand them into places. But prepare, get a good education, and develop your talents that you like. Perform, always doing your best. If you do any less, you're letting yourself down, your family down, your community down. And if the community's down, that's country as well. and persevere. We could have let the fact that folks called us names and the Army was saying we can't do anything technical and gone off about our heads and not served our country. Don't let adverse circumstances be an excuse for not achieving. So how did they, Bob's legacy of something like that can be put together to go with the film and so on, and how that can be made available to expand to other communities and other schools. That there's so many things that can be done. It does take time, it does take support and people, and thanks for what you're doing, and hopefully this can all help add to the future of the foundation.
Thank you very much, General McGee. General Dailey, you've been very patient. I would imagine being a U.S. Marine, in your case, all the way up to a 4-star general, you probably have learned a little bit about patience over the years. But you have had an amazing career yourself, first in the military, and then the great things that you did with the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. So it's a pleasure to have you on board. Again, you have one of those backgrounds we could do an entire show on. So, but based on what you're hearing and just your general thoughts, also your relationship with Bob, if you could tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to the comments here, and they are exactly online or on the mark in terms of what needs to be done, but how to do it is difficult. And one of the things to keep Bob's name in everybody's memory, one way to do it is to name lectures after him or some program and have it be the Bob Hoover whatever. So at least every time people come to this, I assume it would be an annual event, and we get to talk about Bob and why it's this event is named after him and what he's done. But Sean mentioned that he got Harrison Ford up there and they didn't know who he was. Well, I met Bob Hoover in 1957 and I didn't know who he was. I was in flight school down in Pensacola and I had just finished primary and had gone out to Whiting Field for basic. And I was going to transition to the T-28. And they were having some problems with it in those days. And one of them was that the nose gear was not coming down. And the fix at the time when I got there was to cut a hole in the deck of the pilot cockpit and reach in there and release the latch with your hand. So since when you have about 10 hours in the airplane, and I could see what the trick was going to be here to, I've lost the screen. If I don't know whether I'm still on there, but the other thing at the Smithsonian, we had a lot of programs that had to do with science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM subjects. Sean mentioned the Department of Education, they're funding this. There is money available, you can compete for it. And so if we could set up some things to where we had a way to keep Bob in the headlines, and then also to get it funded so that we could have events that would attract people. One of the things that I was distressed about in traveling around the country was the lack of interest in aviation. And you can see it now, even at the Smithsonian, for example, the preponderance of the visits are for space rather than for, although we just went back into space this week and it hardly got any coverage. So it's an indication of what where the interest is in the country. And when you talk to kids about it, they say, well, why do I have to know that? Because I can look it up. It's kind of the answer that you get. And but I think it's an opportunity, and what John's talking about, he's got several programs going in places, and of course Oshkosh has, and Jim's got out there at San Diego. There are lots of programs that we could tag onto and perhaps associate Bob's name with them, right? But normally that requires some cash to come with it. But I think that we're looking for volume. We need to get the word out to a lot of people. We don't want, not everybody is going to go into aviation, but we just want the best ones, of course. But I think come up with something that would give us an opportunity to an exposure to particularly young people. And the things that have been mentioned here were, if I could, I'd just like to tell that story about Bob Hoover, because
Yes, please, please.
I got to Pensacola as I was coming in. I was just reporting aboard. I'd not been there even one day, and a guy came in and made a belly up landing, a wheels up landing in the grass, and so I checked in, and they said, hey, there's a guy named Bob Hoover is going to put on a demonstration here this afternoon. You may want to stick around and watch it. Well, I did, and Bob came out of the hangar there. He's in a suit with a white shirt and tie, and he gets on the gets in the airplane, takes off, and without raising the flaps of the gear, he does a aileron roll and then climbs out and then over the field, came back and put on a dazzling exhibition of aerobatic, came back and landed, got out, and came over to this crowd, which, by the way, included probably more instructors than it did students. And he said, and started a conversation with everybody. It's when I say I met him, I actually did meet him. And told him I really was impressed with his flying ability. And he said, you know, the airplane, he was representing North American, so the T-28 was one of his airplanes. And but he said that it takes concentration, and you know, you're just getting your start here in flight training, but it's what you do after that that's going to make you a pilot. So and then of course over the years we spent many hours together. We invited him to the Smithsonian so many times. He said, "Don't you think the crowd here is being over Hoovered?" And I said, "No, that's not going to happen, because every time you come here, you fill the house, and sometimes it's the same stories, but your enthusiasm and your knowledge of aerodynamics and your knowledge of flight, it makes you special, and people come, you know, they drive in here to hear you." So it's when people come to a presentation in Washington D.C. at night, they're really interested, because it's really a challenge. So I think Hoover's the guy. What the challenge is to figure out how to keep his name and his story in the forefront of education and exposure to young kids, I think.
Yeah, thank you, General Dailey. I couldn't agree with you more. I think everybody's bringing up some really great points. And to your point about reaching, I guess it's twofold. In terms of reaching kids and using the space launch as an example, it was only on one cable network and briefly on the news networks. They had other things that they felt were more pressing. But the streaming networks like the NASA channel and the SpaceX channel, and I could name a whole list of them, were all streaming to millions of people. And I even asked my daughters, I said, "So you guys haven't really said much about the space launch?" And they said, "Well, Dad, we've been watching it on our phones." I think the social media aspect of reaching the next generation still plays, and I'm probably not telling anybody that's watching this right now anything new, but plays a big part of it. And then to the other point that you were bringing up, I think the other, and I think that General McGee was alluding to also, is how do you carry that legacy? How do you show importance? Or how do you get them engaged? I love using the term engaged, because I think that's our goal. It's to get the next generation engaged and motivated and excited and interested in aviation, like all of us are, or some semblance of it, and also to realize all the different opportunities in the industry. So Tracy, Jim, let you guys chime in.
Well, I think that, you know, everybody here is touching on all of the points that are Bob, and certainly fulfill Bob's dreams for the future. Because certainly as we look at the history of Bob and how we got to where we are today, we're able to kind of connect the dots. And now, just as Sean's Academy is, and Jack was mentioning, and certainly General McGee, is we're looking at how do we vision the future with those generations. You know, just as you mentioned the positive impact of social media, you know, it's the realization that a lot of the younger generations pay more attention to that than they do to what someone might define as mainstream media. So we certainly need to be in those forums, and I think we're working there. But it's as we continue the process of coming together, because each person here, just as many other hundreds and thousands of people across the country that knew Bob and knew Bob well and knew what he stood for. You know, you'll look at the EAA, the MBAA, the AOPA, you know, all the various organizations wanting to get together and perpetuate aviation as a legitimate STEM form, because we look at that big topic of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics that we tend to focus on. If we can use aviation and space as a metaphor, in some cases, we're not certain that they all have to go into aviation and space, but they will learn disciplines that will take them other places. You know, the general was talking about Eagle Scout. You know, a number of years ago when I was at the Chief of Naval Air Training Staff, we were trying to piece together what were the elements of young people that could help us predict success if in fact we chose them for the flight program. And overwhelmingly, it wasn't necessarily that they had a technical degree or that they were a sports athlete or whatever. It was giving young people the opportunity to complete things that they start. So I coined it a number of years ago: completion breeds completion. One of the things, and I wasn't necessarily the number one naval aviator of all time, right, Jack? Okay.
That's correct.
That's correct. Maybe number two, but one of the things that I remember, and kind of from those Boy Scout days and growing up, I never believed I wasn't going to complete the program. And that has a lot to do with the importance of instilling a Bob Hoover legacy in young people, that they know that it may be tough, but when they start, they're going to finish. And that's an important element in life, I think, in anything, okay, that with some degree of certainty, we know that if we're going to dive into the pool, we're going to swim to the other end.
Jim, thank you. This is Tracy. I'd like to thank all the people on the call today. We've got some awesome people. And I look forward to all of the people listening in to forward your advice. Some of the people on the call today are Alan Kane, Alan Palmer, Beth Robinson, Bruce McCaw, that guy that flies helicopters upside down, Chuck Aaron, Damian Miller's on the call, Jim Cooling's on the call, Lucino's on the call, Kathy Yodis is on the call, Lauren Green's on the call, Lynn, how are you? Lynn Coey's on the call, Paul Schaefer, Skip Lehman's on the call, Tom Schrody's on the call. We've really got some great participation, and I just highlighted where the names are showing. A lot of people called in, and it just shows their phone number. But we're trying to preserve Bob's legacy, make him relevant for future generations. Any of you that have comments, would like to participate, be part of the organization, drop me a note offline, drop Vince a note offline. We think he's a man that we never want to forget, and help us do that.
Thank you, Tracy. So I was looking to see if we have any questions or comments. If anybody, we have a few minutes. If anybody has any questions or comments, please send us a chat, a question and answer, and we'll see if we can help you out with that. In the meantime, I want to make one more around the room, so to speak, and do some closing comments. We can probably start with you, Jim, and we'll rotate from there.
Sure. Well, I'm going to circle back for a second. You know, Bob became that elder statesman for aviation. He is a metaphor that we think should be remembered. We have the opportunity to do so. And in a weird sort of way, through Bob, together we can all make a difference in the future of aviation and space and the future of overall that STEM topic.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I was just looking. Somebody had a great question here. And actually, I'll go ahead and put it out there because there's been a lot of talk about it, particularly in the last year or two. And that's about getting Bob on a U.S. stamp. Tracy, do we have any update on that or in background on that?
It's still in the process. It's a long process. We need to refresh that and see where it stands, but a commemorative stamp, Bob Hoover stamp, is something on our to-do list. It's quite a process to go through, but it's being worked on, and I really need to get an update on it. I hadn't updated on that in a while.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. General McGee, any closing comments, wrapping up what we've been talking about this hour?
Well, I'd like to say I think the focus will keep us all out of the rocking chair. And I know that's what keeps me going, and so we hope it continues. I'm trying to think of the right word. Certainly, the guide is the legacy of Bob. How we can pass that on in ways that will spur the young people out there, that our country's future is certainly key. I appreciate the opportunity to share in this, and hopefully from what we've said and are doing, that will come about.
General McGee, you have been on the go for about a century now, except for the last couple of months. How are you handling that?
Well, abide by the rules. Fortunately,
Staying home and behaving, huh?
they didn't behave, so the virus hasn't caught up with me yet. Who knows what will come? But I think the fact that we all recognize the importance of the legacy of Bob is key to the future for all of the youngsters that we work with. And talking youngsters, we need to be spurring the young ladies, because one of them will be going to the moon one of these days, not too far in the future. So the motivation of our young people, they are the country's future, and I think the work of the foundation is important in that endeavor.
Thank you very much, General. Sean?
Well, it's been a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be a part of the Bob Hoover family. I just such a passionate advocate of how aviation changes lives that I'm all in.
Thank you, Sean. It's been a pleasure having you on too. General Jack Dailey?
Yeah, I appreciate being included. I heard a lot of old friends' names read there on the list of participants, and it's great to see all of you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciated having you on. Tracy, some closing words?
Just as Jack just said, thanks for everybody to be on the call. I think we all have the passion, the intent, and we just need to never stop. Like Sean and Bob have always said, just keep flying the airplane. So we just need to keep furthering the legacy, doing the good work, and keeping Bob's name out there. Hopefully next time we'll have 100 people on this call, and we'll have a lot of great information of additional students and additional ways that we furthered Bob's legacy.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, we are kind of taking advantage of this downtime with the pandemic to really pull some things together program-wise and initiatives to really further the Bob Hoover legacy. So I'm working very closely with Tracy on that on an almost day-to-day basis, and we are looking forward to making some great announcements down the road. I'd like to thank first all of our panelists, Jim, Sean, General McGee, General Dailey, and you, of course, Tracy, for being on this first-time program. I'll have a couple technical things figured out by the next time. But
Me
I
too.
appreciate that opportunity. You guys are all pilots, so you know we do a pre-flight, and there can be that one thing that doesn't work and can hold a flight up for hours or even cancel the flight. So I think that's why everybody was kind of like, yeah, these things happen. But I appreciate everybody being on. I appreciate all of you who joined us as viewers, and we really, and I recognized all of those names too. Haven't seen most of you in quite a while, so happy to see you being active with us. And again, we appreciate it and appreciate everybody. So thank you very much for joining this live webcast, and we will see you guys again soon. Happy flying.
Thumbs up.
Thank you.